Hi, Andrew Vavra here, and although our Rooster Road Trip has been complete for almost a week now, we are still getting a lot of questions about which tools and which atlases do we use to help ourselves find birds on public lands. So basically what I'm going to do today is kind of give you a quick breakdown in terms of which atlases and which books we use in different states to help us find public land birds. And of course, all of these will be available to you. Simply go into any place that sells licenses, any game and fish website, and you should be able to find access to any of these materials that we have here as well. Our first stop on our Rooster Road Trip was North Dakota. And to find our public lands in North Dakota, we used their 2010 Conservation Plots Guide. It's pretty easy to use. It highlights all the different public areas throughout the state, broken down by region. We happened to stay in the town of Lisbon, and we worked between Lisbon and Fort Ransom. And as you can see, there is quite a bit of public land available to hunters, and we did find a lot of birds, especially in the afternoon. However, it should be noted that throughout our entire trip, where we stayed and where we hunted wasn't necessarily where all the birds were at. We were pretty constricted with having to find a place to hunt, find birds, and get on the road to the next state the next day. So a lot of the places we actually stayed at were where it's kind of a give and take between where there are birds and what's the easiest way to travel in and out. The Rooster Road Trip's second stop was Minnesota, and this is actually the only atlas we used throughout the entire trip that wasn't a free one that's provided by the DNR or Game and Fish. This All Outdoors Atlas is available at any outdoor store throughout the state, and it's extremely handy whether you're searching for pheasants, duck, deer, any of that. But our Rooster Road Trip stop in Minnesota had us staying in Madison, and we actually traveled west a little bit. And as you can see, there are quite a bit of WMAs and different public land areas to choose from. I must admit, being partial to duck hunting, I have had a few really good hunts on the Salt Lake WMA, but you didn't hear that from me. That might be my little own honey hole, if you will. Our third stop on the trip was good old South Dakota, the state that perennially ranks #1 in terms of birds harvested every year. And to find our public land birds, we used this 2010 hunting atlas. We based ourselves out of Huron for the night, and we actually worked our way west, and we encountered a lot of various public land areas. None of them were being pressured too hard, which was a big surprise and a big relief to us. And we saw hundreds of birds. Now, whether those birds would hold for us or not, that was a different question, but it goes to no surprise that there are a ton of birds in South Dakota, and you really can't do wrong if that's what you're after. Now, on our fourth stop on the trip, we headed to Nebraska, and we used their public access atlas as well. And for the night, we based ourselves out of McCook, Nebraska, and we actually used Highway 6, and we traveled up Highway 6, and as you can see, all these little red dots are all big chunks of land. They're all open to public hunting. And we actually had our most success in Nebraska. And hunting in this little corridor right in here actually produced more birds in the shortest amount of time compared to the rest of the entire trip. So it's a little bit of a drive for us in terms of coming from the Twin Cities of Minnesota, but this was definitely well worth it, and I'd suggest go checking it out. Last but certainly not least, we concluded our trip in Kansas for their pheasant and quail opener, and we had an absolute blast. And using their Kansas hunting atlas, we were able to find a ton of land throughout the Norton, Kansas area, which is where we stayed the night thanks to some very kind people from the Longspur chapter out of Norton. And as you can see, Kansas is just absolutely loaded in this area with public lands, and there were birds everywhere. This Norton wildlife area was really popular with the locals. However, being at opening weekend, it was a little crowded. So what we did is we got off the beaten trail a little bit and headed in this area. And we were able to not only bag a rooster, but we got a quail out of the deal. So that was extremely special for all of us coming from a little bit of northern climate. So there you have it. As you can see, it's pretty easy. There's lots of public lands out there. So here's to you and having good success in public lands and finding a few roosters.